The Pacific Northwest is full of fantastical tales of cryptid creatures and ghost stories. Colossal Claude is one of those creatures. Hello and welcome to Spooky Tales of the Pacific Northwest and Beyond. This is Jennifer. So I got some new recording equipment. So it might sound better, it might sound worse. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's just a fancy little microphone, that's all. But yeah, our tale today is the story of Colossal Claude, which is a rather large cryptid located around the mouth of the Columbia River, in between Washington and Oregon. So a little bit about the Columbia. The Columbia is a river that is around 1,243 miles in length, and it has varying depths. The depths of the Columbia can be mostly, on average, 55 to 43 feet in depth, and then it has a width of anywhere between 2,640 feet and 600 feet, depending on the area. There are parts of the Columbia that are deeper than that. The water depth of the river near Portland is about 400 feet. The Wallula Gap is 1,000 feet, and it's about 300 feet at the Dalles. The gorge itself, though, like the Columbia River Gorge, is really deep, and it has been measured at some depths of 4,000 feet. So that's pretty deep. The gorge meanders all over the place, and it wanders past different cliffs and spires and ridges. And it's, yeah, like I said, the depths of the Columbia are pretty, they vary in deepness, I guess. The Columbia is also home to hundreds of different animal species, including river otters, salmon, sturgeon, and sometimes even sharks live at its mouth. And I think a little bit up the river before it turns fully fresh. The mouth of the river is also home to hundreds, if not thousands, of seals and sea lions. The banks of the river can also see different animals from cougar to bighorn sheep traveling up and down its length. All in all, the Columbia is long, deep, and home to many different animal species. Is it also home to the creature that has been dubbed Colossal Claude, or is it just a case of mistaken identity? Colossal Claude has had sightings that date all the way back to at least the 1930s. There may be sightings longer than that, but none of my research determined whether there was anything before 1930s. One of the first sightings of Colossal Claude was by the crew of the light ship called Columbia. Excuse me, I'm taking a drink of coffee. And they claim to have been the first to have spotted him, and that was in 1934. The crew claim that Claude was a rather large animal and is said to be about 40 feet in length. The crew also claimed that the monster resembled a long serpentine animal with a thick body and an evil horse-like head. If any of you know anything about cryptids or any of the various different animals that have been said to be cryptids, that resembles both the Lake Chelan monster and the Loch Ness monster. The crew of the Columbia also reportedly watched the creature through binoculars, but they ultimately declined to give chase as they were very scared that Claude would swamp their ship, which I think whales have been known to do that every now and again, but like not on accident, not like, we're not going to get into the whole orca sinking ship things over in like the Spain area and stuff like that. That's an entirely different situation and an entirely different story. Shortly after this sighting, there would be even more. Most of the time, Claude was described as being a large creature coming in and around 50 feet in length. So maybe if it's one creature, it grew some. And it always has the same claim of having a long neck and tail, and that he has a very horse-like head. Some people say that it resembles a plesiosaur, which is one of the things that people say that the Loch Ness Monster resembles as a plesiosaur. Some of the fishermen who have seen him are also have claimed to have seen him and well, I don't even know what I just said there. Some of the fishermen who claim to have seen Claude report that he was long, hairy, and tan colored. So he went from resembling a plesiosaur, which is a type of aquatic reptile from, like we all know what a plesiosaur is, but they don't have fur. Although they are like long, round bodied with long tails and necks. They also claim that he would constantly raid their fishing lines and break through the nets. In 1937, a gentleman named Charles E. Graham, who happened to be skippering the commercial fishing trawler called Viv, claimed the creature had a 4-foot waist with the head of an overgrown horse. Another sighting in 1939 by a halibut boat called the Argo claimed to see Claude rear up out of the water over 10 feet. The crew also reported that he was just short of 10 feet away from the hull of their ship, and they watched him as he ate a fish like nonchalantly without a care in the world. The crew described the creature as having a camel-shaped head with coarse and gray fur. Sightings and report of Colossal Claude were steady all through the 1950s, but they did start to slow down and decline after the 50s. The Shell Oil Company claims to have seen a 15-foot animal during an oil search in 1963. There is a rumor that a video of the sighting does exist, but I did not see it, and I have never seen it anywhere on the internet anywhere. I don't even think I've seen it on Reddit, which is a dumpster fire of all kinds of things. Let's see, where was I? Sometime during a sighting, Claude was also nicknamed Marvin the Monster, which I like Colossal Claude better than Marvin the Monster, thanks. This sighting also claims he had barnacled ridges and was swimming in over 180 feet of water. There also wouldn't be another sighting of Claude until 1989, when a fishing net was being dragged at the mouth of the Columbia. It snagged on something and wouldn't release, which is frustrating. If you've ever been fishing and had your hook snag on literally a snag is what we call them up here, trees and stuff underneath the water that you don't see, and your hook gets caught, it gets snagged, so we call them snags. And it wouldn't release. It was such a strong snag that the bow of the boat had actually started to be pulled under the water, which yet another reason why I don't go on the ocean. That would be absolutely terrifying. I don't care who you are. Just the thought of your boat being tugged by something with its bow going into the water is just no thanks. Nah, I'll pass. Thank you. Captain Donald Riswick of that particular boat said that when the net was finally released from the snag and pulled up, there was a big hole in the net. The captain said that the hole in the several hundred feet long net was made by the colossal sea monster. These fishing trawling nets are enormous. They're gigantic. It doesn't really specify how big the hole was in that particular net, only that it was extremely large. This would actually be the very end of all of the local sightings of Colossal Claude. Some speculate Claude moved from the Columbia to the Pacific or even into other parts of the river. Maybe Colossal Claude has decided that he is going to live in the gorge, considering how deep the gorge is. Maybe you would never even find him. I've never been to the gorge, and I heard it's a really pretty place. It is also very important to note that there are several animal species, like I said at the beginning, that live in and around the Columbia River. Some of them can even be mistaken as furry tanned creatures. Seals and sea lions make their homes at the mouth of the Columbia, and there are literally hundreds or thousands of these flubby little beasts. And they've been known to rob nets and steal catches. So maybe when that boat was being tugged down, I don't know that like it could have been like a seal, but sea lions get pretty freaking big. And so maybe it tugged it and they thought that it was tipping the bow down, and it was just like moving it a little bit, and maybe it was just an overly large male sea lion stealing their catch out of their net. I don't know. I mean, that kind of sounds plausible and implausible at the same time. So, maybe I'm correct and maybe I'm wrong. They also have extremely round bodies, especially seals. And sometimes when they're just bobbing along in the water and just their head is above the water, they kind of do have an equine kind of esque shape to their head, or at least a camel shaped head, look to their head. So in lower lights, and if you are like tired or whatever, maybe you could mistake a seal or a sea lion head for a horse head. And maybe that's what Colossal Claude possibly might be. There is another common fish species that apparently always gets mistaken for cryptid creatures, or it's a theory that a cryptid creature is, and that is the white sturgeon. The white sturgeon lives everywhere from up into Alaska all the way down to California on the coast. They do get in like enormous proportions, like they're very, very large, and excuse me, they have a weird looking head. So like it is possible that it could, like be mistaken for an evil looking horse head. I couldn't tell you, but they also have bony ridges along their backs. That could be, that could be part of the whole barnacled ridges thing for Colossal Claude. Sturgeon get mistaken for a lot of different creatures because they are so ancient. There is even a theory that the Lake Chelan monster is actually a sturgeon and not really any kind of reptile or anything like that. River otters also live in the Columbia, and they are quite furry and brown, and sometimes they could look a little bit tan. So they could also be what people are mistaking for claw. They get pretty big too. Like they can get pretty large. River otters can. So maybe, these are what's being mistaken for this sea creature. Now, whatever is coming out of the water 10 feet in the air, that could be either a plesiosaur. I don't think it is, or it could be a whale, because depending on where exactly the sighting is taking place, the West Coast has humpback whales and gray whales that actually have migratory patterns past Oregon and Washington. And we also have pods of transient orcas that are up and down the coast all the time. Whales do a lot of jumping and leaping and tail lobbing and thumping and all kinds of stuff. And there's a possibility that one of the gray whales or the humpbacks or something breaching, in the low light of the morning, maybe confused somebody and, they thought it was Colossal Claude. I've never heard of orcas like stealing catches, but that's not beyond the realm of possibility. I mean, there's evidence to suggest that pods of orcas used to work with people for catches, not necessarily fish, but other whale, because killer whales they're called killer whales because they also predate whales. So it's possible that maybe a couple transient whales decided that they were going to have a snack, and that snack happened to be inside a net, and that net kind of got tugged along, and the boat kind of tipped and dipped, and and then the whales popped the hole and stole the fish and let go of the net. So there's a lot of different things that could absolutely be mistaken for Colossal Claude. I do love that name, by the way. Like I said, the humpbacks are spotted at the mouth of the river during their migration times, and they could easily be the source of some of these sightings. Whether Claude is a case of mistaken identity or not, no one knows. What kind of creature He is, and he just may go down in the legend books as just as unsolved as the Loch Ness Monster or the Lake Chelan Monster. That's it for Colossal Claude. It's not a really long episode, but sometimes I feel like the shorter the episodes are, it's easier for me to research, so the episodes come out to be a little bit easier and nicer. But yeah, so that was Colossal Claude. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast Musics, Amazon Music, and Spotify. We also have an Instagram where I will link some of the images and drawings I found of Claude online, and that is at Spooky PNW Podcast. We also have an email that you can send in any kind of spooky tale from anywhere, doesn't matter where, and that is spookypnwpod@gmail.com. You can also send those tales into my DMs on the Instagram if you want to. I don't mind, and I would love to feature them on an episode or two. So that was Colossal Claude, and that was my spiel to get you guys to send me emails. Still working on the Patreon. That is, I'm getting together some information for a excuse me, for a Patreon only episode, and that will feature, the Portland area, which is pretty fascinating in and of itself, but it has some pretty spooky things and some pretty interesting things that have happened in that city centuries, because it's a pretty old city. I will also, so I'm not quite sure what our next episode will be. It probably won't be a cryptid. I might look for some more hauntings. Maybe I'll do an old-timey murder or something. I'm not quite sure yet. So yeah, thanks for listening, and keep it spooky.